The United States reportedly carried out more new strikes in Iran. MS Now has confirmed reporting that, according to an American official, the target was a military site and several Iranian drones near the Strait of Hormuz that officials believe posed a threat to U.S. forces. That official says the strikes were intended to maintain the ceasefire. Meanwhile, that potential peace agreement between the U.S. and Iran we heard about only seems to be getting further and further from a reality. The White House rejected an Iranian state media report of the framework for a deal, calling it a fabrication. State media reported the deal included reopening shipping in the Strait of Hormuz under the control of Iran and Oman, along with an end to the American naval blockade. Then, shortly after the White House rejected that report, Trump held his cabinet meeting. And, folks, it certainly sounds like there's no rush to get a deal done.
There's an agreement to be made. We want that to be made. I think there's been some progress and some interest, and we'll see over the next few hours and days whether progress could be made. I just want to remind everybody, Mr. President, you know this well, you have other options available to you if that doesn't work.
They are starting to give us the things that they have to give us, and if they do, that's great. And if they won't, then the man on my left is going to finish them off. Now, the strait's going to be open to everybody. Nobody's going to control it. It's international waters, and Oman will behave just like everybody else, so we'll have to blow them up. They understand that. They'll be fine.
Well, the nightcap is still here. There's a lot there. Kayla, I'm going to start with you. The White House seems to be caught in this, like, yo-yo, for lack of a better term, this pattern where they themselves announce a deal or they say they're close to a deal, or a deal is near, then they threaten to restart the war. The president right there talking about blowing them up. I mean, meanwhile, no one seems to really know how much progress has actually been made. What is going on?
Yeah, I mean, today it was confusing because Iran had released this reported memorandum of understanding. And when we initially asked the White House about whether it was accurate, they simply said negotiations are continuing. The president has made his red line clear. And then the White House went on X and said, this is a total fabrication. It's very unclear and confusing, frankly, where these negotiations stand. At the end of the day, Iran is now in a position where they have this leverage. They know that they can control this Strait of Hormuz. And as you heard from President Trump there, he is not focused on the political ramifications, on the domestic impact that Iran is betting that he is focused on. And that leaves us in a very uncomfortable situation and, frankly, with no end in sight.
Important to note, prior to the war with Iran being started, they did not control the Strait of Hormuz. Angelo, how does the news media cover this war when both sides here are known for not telling the truth? I mean, the fact that we are citing Iranian news media reports is still very jarring for me because since when can we take the Iranians at face value? But then also we're not getting a lot of clarity from the United States government at this point.
So I think one and this is where I give them no pass, and they should get a lot of criticism for it. Is that Trump has had a strategy? He's very open. He doesn't have many strategies, but one muscle memory he has is this idea of a 2-week thing. He's been doing this for decades. Is that when he has a tough question, he says 2 weeks and I'll get back to you, and he's brazen about it. He says, well, that kicks the can. People will give you the 2 weeks, and for the most part, the news media will move on, and that works. It feels like we are having the same news cycle every 10 to 12 days. I mean, because it basically is what happens. One of these reports comes out, people then ask about it. It says, oh, we're working on it, 2 weeks, couple weeks, and then we're back again. Something happens, some new development, some Iranian report, and now we're asking these questions. So one, I think they're falling into that trap, that cycle. So that's the first thing. They shouldn't be doing that. There needs to be a lot more doggedness and consistency and persistence and not letting him hijack the narrative with those gaps. I think the second thing, and this ties in what we were talking about earlier, which is that we should not lose sight of how much this is the story of the economy, because it is. Food prices, gas, all of these things, fertilizer, all those local news stories tie back to this. It's not just about tariffs and Trump's lack of governance. It is what he has done here. And that is starting to get a little bit more attenuated. People are not going to, that has to constantly be reconnected. And they're losing sight of that connective tissue. And I think that's a big thing, a big failure. And then the third is, there's only so much pressure you can put on Trump. Let's be real. But there are a whole bunch of people around him that have futures and hopes, Rubio being one of them. If you look at it, it's not very effective. We don't have to clutch our pearls about the ridiculous, scary stuff he said. We shouldn't lose sight of how wild that is and talk about blowing up countries. And, we should not become numb to that. But Rubio is not getting nearly enough pressure, either for what he's doing or incompetence. This is incompetence. He has all the leverage in the world, and he can't get a deal? What's the deal? That's an issue. And I don't know why the people around him are not getting more pressure. They are susceptible to some of those laws of nature that the media has at their disposal, and they're not, because Trump is allowing himself to be the singular focus.
Yeah, they will have to live with the ramifications of this. You know, you talk about this back and forth, David, and we talk about the economy, which we're going to get to more in the next block, but sometimes we talk about the K-shaped economy here on the 11th hour. And it seems like this back and forth is helping the poll numbers somewhere, right? Or maybe how people feel about the stock market. Right, because the stock market is up. You know, these reports come out, this back and forth, and then, oh, okay, the stock market says, oh, wait, okay, we're going to take a beat in the breath. Maybe this is okay. Now, gas prices are still up, right? People don't love the war. The polls are not great about the war. But when it comes to the stock market, it is a story about the economy, because the richest people in this country, they are still doing well. The war is not necessarily negatively affecting them in that way as so much. But when you talk to the oil execs, they do caution that even if this war were to end tomorrow, the prices that the consumers are contending with are not coming down right away.
This is an economic dynamic, and you talk to economists, which I did earlier in the war, and they call it the rockets and feathers dynamic, which is geopolitical instability, war, and oil prices shoot up like a rocket. You can end the war, and it still takes a long time for them to come down. They drift down like a feather. And so when the president talks about the idea of the war ending and prices dropping like a rock, that's just not how this works, even though we all wish it would work that way. You know, this has been kind of like the infrastructure week of the first term and the second term, but a lot more serious, or Lucy with the football. I think that what the president is doing is part and parcel of who he has always been, which is he's just trying to sell you something, right? He was trying to sell golf courses. He was trying to sell hotels. He was very good at it. And it's like, hey, this is a great deal. What about the financing? Don't worry, we'll get to the financing. It's just this is War and Peace, and so it's a lot different. I think the reason, among others, that he tries to create the impression of a deal to end the war, not only because he wants a deal to end the war, but because the one pressure that he is susceptible to, and it's not poll numbers, because none of this has impacted his poll numbers. He talks about a deal, the war's about to end, his poll numbers do not change. They don't change for Republicans. Things have only gotten worse. But the stock market is the one thing that he believes. It's not rigged. It's not fake. The bond markets are the other things that he believes, because he understands about borrowing money. And when he worries about the financial markets getting out of control or going in the wrong direction, then he works to bring them back to a place that is healthy. And look, this is no different than we saw in some ways during Biden's term, where the stock market and the financial markets were doing great. But people in the everyday economy, even people who might be doing a lot better than they think they're doing, still think that I'm not doing as well as I should be doing. And that's the big problem that the war exacerbated, because the president already had this problem before the war. It just made it worse, in part because he never justified the war to the American people. I've always said, you may disagree with it, but there was a great case to make for why now. He never made it. He got no congressional buy-in. He got no public buy-in. He got no buy-in from our allies.
At least George W. Bush tried to sell it to us back in the day.
And he did sell it. It went south when we were losing and we didn't find weapons of mass destruction and all of that. He sold it to our allies. He sold it to the public. He sold it to the Congress, who approved it. This is why Trump is on an island.